Have you ever felt out of sync with yourself? Like your thoughts are scattering in six directions, while something deeper, something more true even, just can't break through. That feeling is not just psychology, it's physics, and maybe even mathematics. Hi, if you're new here, I'm James. This is The Quantified Soul. It's where we explore the overlap between neuroscience, metaphysics, and a system called ontological mathematics. The goal is to understand what the soul really is, not just metaphorically, but structurally. To see how the logic of thought and the signal of the brain are actually part of the same system. So if that's your kind of thing, welcome. Okay. When I started writing The Dreams Matter, my upcoming book, I had a question in the back of my mind. Who else is circling this same strange attractor? Who else is wrestling with the structure of consciousness, the origin of experience, and the architecture of reality itself? So I did what any of us might do when they get started. I Googled the top 50 living philosophers. And what I found was a field still under the gravity, you might even say the spell, of scientific materialism. A few gestures towards panpsychism, sure, but almost no one was willing to question and challenge the bedrock assumption that reality is made of stuff. Modern philosophy had moved on from ontology to language games, moral puzzles, and edge case epistemology. And yet, beneath all those debates, I think still lies the most fundamental question. What is this? What is being? That's when I found Bernardo Kastrup. Kastrup doesn't just question materialism, he dissects it methodically, mathematically, and metaphysically. He exposes how the standard model of consciousness, the one we're used to, relies on metaphor instead of mechanism. He talks about how it smuggles in assumptions and how it dodges the hard problem by just pretending it's solved. His work is really a gift to anyone who senses that mind doesn't emerge from matter, but the other way around. In his books, like Why Materialism is Baloney and Analytic Idealism in a Nutshell, Kastrup lays out a worldview where mind is not in the universe, but rather the universe is in mind. Now, even as I nodded along, and I really enjoyed these books, I felt a familiar itch. I felt like Kastrup opens the door, but doesn't always walk all the way through it. He tells us what reality is. It's mental, unified, but dissociated. But he hesitates to say how it works, how it builds itself, how it evolves, and how it maintains coherence. And that's where ontological mathematics comes in. Ontological mathematics is a framework that dares to map what Kastrup gestures towards. Where analytic idealism stops at mind is all there is, ontological mathematics asks, what is mind made of? And it answers, it's made of sinusoidal waves and frequency domains. This is pure mathematics, not metaphor or abstract, but as ontology. This system has roots in Pythagorean rationalism, but it's evolved over the last 2,500 years into something far more profound and technical. It's a formal model of soul dynamics, structured through Euler's formula and the Fourier transform. It's not easy. It's a complex system. It's not polished for mass appeal. But frankly, it's the only framework I found that actually attempts to define the soul in mathematical terms, any terms really, and shows how that definition explains mind, matter, and everything in between. To really grasp what ontological mathematics is offering here, we have to zoom out, way out, back to the beginning. Not the physical Big Bang, but let's call it the mathematical Big Bang. So imagine this. All of reality begins not with matter, but with mathematics. A perfect balance of opposing frequency functions, each one a self-moving, self-existing mind called a monad. Now, these aren't particles, they're dimensionless minds, each defined by a unique frequency signature, but all existing within the same closed zero-sum system. Their original state is one of zero entropy. With Euler's formula as the engine of perpetual mental motion, each mind produces the same sine and cosine waves in every possible frequency. These sine and cosine waves, orthogonal to each other, are not just equivalent to, they are light. But zero entropy is static, there's no action. So the perfect symmetry has to break, and it does this with the first act of unconscious will. Suddenly, each mind is scrambled. Phase is introduced. Now producing all variety of sinusoidal waves, each mind becomes its own unique interference pattern of thought. This is the real Big Bang, not a blast of particles through empty space, and not a single mind becoming dissociated or breaking into smaller pieces, but infinite minds who used to exist in perfect harmony and symmetry, losing their balance. In these interference patterns, based on phase, waves either constructively or destructively interfere. At this point, there's no coherence yet, no structure, just noise. Beautiful, balanced, buzzing noise. But then something subtle happens. Some frequencies start to sync up. Tiny alignments, small resonances, not because of external force, but because mathematics demands it. This is a self-solving equation. These minds are choosing to become more coherent within themselves, and then order emerges, not by chance, but again by mathematical necessity. Each monad begins as a storm of unstructured frequencies. But over time, we've got these sub-patterns emerge and stabilize. They form internal resonances, kind of like miniature harmonies within itself. And eventually, they start to converge towards a coherent center. And that's what we might call a self. Kastrup's idea of cosmic dissociation is powerful, a single mind fracturing into many. But let's take that further. In the Dream of Matter, I argue that dissociation isn't just cosmic, it's fractal. First of all, we're not just fragments of the one. We are all eternal individuated souls that just happened to share the same configuration before the Big Bang. If you were to see it visually, it would look like one thing, one mind, because every soul overlapped and shared exactly the same configuration, thinking the exact same sinusoidal thoughts. But this is not an ontological unity, this was a functional unity. And you see, each of us is also, we become internally fragmented at the Big Bang. A field of conflicting signals just trying to cohere. So the self isn't a singular agent, but a complex interference pattern with lots of basically subminds. What we call I may just be the equilibrium point in a chaotic waveform, which can frankly also have many other pockets that all each feel like I. Now, let's go a little bit deeper on these frequency systems. Each component, each constituent wave is defined by frequency, so it's kind of archetypal identity, the basic language of thought, its amplitude, or how strongly it expresses itself, and phase, its relationship to other waves. Now, phase is everything. When waves are in phase, they amplify, constructive interference. And when they're out of phase, they cancel, destructive interference. That's not just optics, that's identity. And that's why some parts of us feel vibrant and aligned, and others feel muted, exiled, or even numb. Most of us, we're not broken, we're just out of phase with ourselves. And so this turns individuation into far more than a Jungian metaphor. Growth isn't about just polishing a static self. It's about reducing internal phase conflict. It's just learning how to tune ourselves, not to a single pitch, but to coherence across a structured spectrum. In this view, the soul is a frequency system, a closed waveform network, defined by Euler's formula, balanced to zero, and infinitely recursive, with also infinite potential. And here's the kicker. No wave, no soul, exists in isolation. Just as waves interfere within a psyche, they also interfere between psyches. What we call relationship is just signal interaction across a shared ontological field. When minds are in phase, they amplify, they cooperate. When minds are out of phase, they fragment and don't cooperate. And this is true of marriages, societies, species, even civilizations. In fact, we might argue that every conflict at root may have at its root phase distortion. Kestrup also emphasizes will over structure. He leans very Schopenhauerian, suggesting that mind is more a chaotic flow than a system with logic. It just does its mind stuff. But ontological mathematics says maybe that chaos, what looks like chaos, has a logic. Maybe the discord isn't disorder, it's just due to this dephasing. We're not fragments, we're turning to a single mind. We are distinct waveforms aligning voluntarily, creating a kind of a resonant lattice of differentiated selves working together. Goal isn't unity through nihilistic collapse and denial of self. It's coherence through structure and self-actualization, really maximizing all of our potential. The universe is evolving from a chaotic mob mind, with each participating mind unaware and not cooperating with each other, hopefully towards a coordinated hive mind, each playing a cooperative role in a much larger picture that will ultimately turn every mind to the same perfect view of reality. And this isn't just speculative. We can measure this. Logically, in a dual aspect monism such as this, everything around us is at some level a reflection of the collective tree. While our brains are not one-to-one mappings to our soul, they do provide a glimpse into the intersection between our individual mind or soul and the collective. So by measuring our brainwaves, we can gain insight into the mathematical sinusoids that lie beyond our thoughts. And check this out. That phase coherence we've been talking about, this also shows up in EEGs. Disorders like dissociative identity disorder and PTSD often involve disrupted phase relationships between brain regions, right? The mind becomes fragmented, really fragmented. But really, if you look closely, nearly all neuropsychiatric disorders, when we look at it in the brain in EEG, they're really disorders of phase. So you can think of your anxiety like a version of yourself with anxiety, and procrastination. That could be different parts of your psyche just not cooperating. If the brain is a projection surface, an echo of soul dynamics, then trauma isn't just emotional, what we feel, it's also structural, and we can measure it, and we can change it, and we can heal it. Healing isn't just about narrative and feelings, it's about tuning your waveform. So here's the so what. If reality is structured like this, if the soul is a frequency system, then everything changes. For one thing, purpose becomes clear. The goal of spirituality is not to dissolve into cosmic oneness, but it's to maximize each and all of us potential to develop the most conscious and cooperative collective intelligence possible. And mental health becomes one of our most important investments in society. After all, an unhealthy mind develops an unhealthy world. And you can begin scaling this even further out to other domains as well. Like, what are the economic, social, and political structures and systems needed to support this kind of evolution? We may be standing at the threshold of something extraordinary, a bridge between soul and brain, a physics of thought, a metaphysics with a mathematics inside of it. So next time you feel scattered, out of phase, incoherent, remember, that's not failure, it's just interference. You're still singing, you just haven't tuned all your voices yet. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, you're not just curious. You're probably committed to understanding reality more deeply. And that's what this channel is all about. Exploring consciousness through systems, not just stories. So if this resonates, please hit subscribe. There's more to come. Videos that will explore the hidden architecture of mind and matter, go a whole lot deeper in this stuff. And if you'd like to read more, check out my Substack, The Dream of Matter. And If you're struggling with focus, mood, if you feel out of phase with yourself, check out Peak Mind. That's my practice where we help people not just cope, but really tune the signal of their brain and strengthen the waveform of their soul. Because the soul may be eternal, but a signal, that can always be improved. See you next time.